Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. This happened a few years back, around 2019. My friend, let's call her Emily, had been dating this guy Jake for almost 3 years when she found out he'd been unfaithful. Word travels fast in small towns, you know? Emily heard from mutual friends that Jake had hooked up with some random girl at a party, getting her wasted before sleeping with her. Worse, it seemed like this wasn't the first time he'd pulled that kind of stunt. Well, Emily wasn't about to take that lying down. She cooked up a deliciously devious plan to get even with her cheating boyfriend. She invited Jake over for a special afternoon at her apartment, telling him her roommate Amber would be joining the fun too. Jake, the horny idiot, took the bait immediately. So there he was, strutting into Emily's building, riding the elevator up to the 12th floor. He knocked, and Emily opened the door, music playing inside. Both Emily and Amber were decked out in skimpy lingerie. Emily held up a blindfold, telling Jake to put it on. Like a puppy chasing a treat, he obeyed, stripping down to his birthday suit. While Jake was busy getting naked, Amber quickly slipped her clothes back on. She propped the door open with a doorstop and called the elevator. Then, she grabbed Jake's clothes and tossed them out the window into the courtyard below. Amber left the apartment, knocking on doors as she made her way down the stairwell to really stir up the neighbors. Meanwhile, Emily was leading Jake around the apartment, disorienting him. Finally, she guided the blindfolded, stark-naked Jake out into the hallway, closing the door behind her. Emily hopped on the elevator alone, calling out, "Your clothes are in the courtyard, you cheating asshole," as the doors slid shut. Jake ripped off the blindfold, probably realizing just how screwed he was. He had to walk down 12 floors, butt naked, passing by gawking, laughing neighbors the whole way down. He eventually made it to the courtyard, collecting his clothes amid a crowd of onlookers. Needless to say, Emily never saw that two-timing jerk again after that humiliating ordeal. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived on my family's land for as long as I can remember. My grandparents bought this sprawling property years ago and built a beautiful farmhouse on it. When they passed, they left it to my parents, who eventually handed it down to me. I cherish every inch of this place. The rolling green hills, the charming barn, the pond where I used to swim as a kid. It all holds precious memories. That's why I was horrified when a new neighbor moved in last year and started acting like she owned the place. And when I say the place, I mean my land. You see, this woman, who I'll call Karen, formed a homeowners association for our rural community. I had no interest in joining, so I politely declined. But Karen wouldn't take no for an answer. It started off subtly at first. I'd notice her having these elaborate garden parties on what I assumed was her property. But when I went to investigate, I realized the guests were traipsing all over my land, without permission. When I kindly asked them to leave, they stared at me like I was crazy. "This is part of the homeowner association community grounds," Karen hissed at me. "Everyone has access." I tried to explain that this was private property, not an homeowner association recreation area. But Karen insisted that by forming the homeowner association, she now controlled the entire neighborhood, including my family farm. Things escalated quickly from there. One morning, I awoke to find Karen and her cronies building a playground smack dab in the middle of my cornfield. I raced outside in my pajamas, yelling for them to stop. Karen didn't even blink. "This playground will increase our home values," she declared. "As president of the homeowner association, I decide what's best for the community." I was seeing red. Without thinking, I jumped on the half-finished jungle gym and ripped down the beams with my bare hands. Karen gasped, clutching her pearls dramatically. "How dare you destroy homeowner association property?" she screamed. This woman was out of her mind. I got right up in her face and made myself very clear. "For the last time, I do not belong to your homeowner association. This is my family's private land that you are trespassing on. I have every right to tear down whatever I damn well please." Karen's nostrils flared angrily. For a second, I thought she might slap me. Instead, she stormed off, shrieking that I hadn't heard the last of her. Boy, was she right. The very next weekend, I awoke to a parade of cars snaking down my gravel driveway. Marching bands blared, floats bobbed along, kids ran around giggling with candy floss. I stepped onto my front porch, dumbfounded. Karen was leading the chaos, waving a big banner that read, "First Annual Homeowner Association Community Parade." When she saw my utter look of confusion, her red lips curled into a smug little smile. "Don't you just love our first parade?" she called out. "I thought it would be fun to hold it on the biggest property in the neighborhood." This was the last freaking straw. I leaped over the porch railing and ran straight for the parade, cutting the floats off mid-street. Parents grabbed their startled kids as I ripped away Karen's banner and got right in her face. "Get the hell off my land now!" I bellowed, my voice booming across the field. Karen blinked rapidly, taken aback. Clearly, she hadn't expected me to fight back again. Her shock quickly turned to indignation. "You're ruining a community event!" she sputtered. "I'll make sure you pay for this!" I'd had it with her threats. Marching inside, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. Within 10 minutes, 2 police cruisers came zipping down the drive, lights flashing. Officers stepped out and I gave them an earful, showing them my property line indeed. Karen was in tears now, shrieking about me destroying our community. But the cops weren't having it. They ordered her to immediately cease all homeowner association activity on my private property. Karen tried to insist the land belonged to her homeowner association, but the officers shut her down fast. With a trembling lip, Karen corralled her flock and their floats off my property. I tell you, watching her taillights disappear down that gravel drive was one of the greatest joys I've ever felt. But if you thought this story ended there, just wait. It gets better. The cops advised me to get a restraining order against Karen, so I did exactly that. Her teary eyes bugged out of her head when she was served those legal papers at her tacky McMansion. And that wasn't all. I decided to hit her where it really hurt, her wallet. So I slapped Karen with a massive lawsuit for trespassing and property damage. When we finally had our day in court, Karen pranced in dressed like a real housewife, dripping in diamonds. Too bad her flashy jewelry didn't dazzle the judge. When confronted with my ironclad property records, Karen's cocky facade crumbled. Turns out her homeowner association bylaws held no legal standing whatsoever. The judge slammed his gavel in my favor, awarding me a sweet 5-figure settlement. Karen burst into sobs as he declared she had recklessly infringed upon private property rights. As Karen fled the court, mascara streaming down her cheeks, the victory felt incredible. But the ultimate cherry on top? I used that settlement money to put up menacing no trespassing signs across every inch of my property line. So if you ever drive by and see an angry blonde stomping her heels on the sidewalk, screaming at the fences because she can't access her beloved community playground or parade route, that's my Karen. She's learned her lesson now. My land belongs to me and me alone. And this country girl will be ready with a shotgun if Karen or her cronies ever try to trespass again. The next one is a petty revenge story. Several years ago, I worked the late shift as an online customer support agent for a women's clothing company. The other CSAs and I were constantly mistreated by crappy customers, and our managers did absolutely nothing to support us. The company valued its customers so much that the rules for dealing with them were disgustingly lax. For example, this one guy would call in obviously masturbating, but we weren't allowed to hang up on him because he never actually said he was. We had a 3-strike policy where a customer could say pretty much anything they wanted to 3 times before they were disconnected and banned. But we also had a 1-day turnover policy where if a customer was cut off for inappropriate behavior, the ban was reset the next day. So someone could come in, tell you that you're an idiot 3 times, get kicked off, and then come and do it again the next day. The entire time I worked there, I never saw a single person get permanently banned, not even the masturbating guy. I eventually ended up quitting specifically because a customer harassed me to the point of me crying, and my manager's response was that I could have an unpaid 10-minute break now instead of my 15-minute break later. Yeah. One of the worst customers was this woman we'll call Kathy. This woman would enter our CSA chats around midnight, drunk, she admitted to this. She would ask questions like, "What jeans do you think go with this top?" While the CSA answered, Kathy would say things like, "Wow, this is taking so long. Imagine working a minimum wage job at midnight. Bet you want to kill yourself." Warning #1. The next time, it would get a little worse. "Wow, you're such a loser. Have you ever thought about killing yourself? I would if I was you." Warning #2. The last time each night, it would be something like, "I hope you die. You're so sad. You should kill yourself." At that point, we'd let her know we could no longer help her, and we'd disconnect her. And then she'd pop back in chat within a few days and the whole thing would start over. She always said the same kinds of things. She clearly knew she could say 3 separate terrible things to us. Our managers never helped or stepped in. I once looked this woman up. I wanted to know who she was. To my surprise, I found out that she was a therapist. She had her own practice. I was baffled. What she did was a horrible, cruel, unkind thing. I couldn't believe a therapist would do this. I later quit working at the company. I waited a few weeks, and then I made a phone call. To Kathy's practice. I spoke to Kathy. I told her I was seeking therapy. During our intake call, she asked me what kind of issues I was facing. "Well," I said, "I do this really weird, psychotic thing a few nights a week. I get really drunk, and I start a chat with minimum wage customer support agents, and I tell them multiple times that they should kill themselves. That's so ducking crazy, right?" She made a tiny noise. A moment passed. The call disconnected. My friends at the company said that she never messaged them again. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Young woman of color who looks like she is in high school but is actually in her mid-20s. I have one major example of malicious compliance, as I have been with my current science consulting role at a boutique firm since graduating college. Most of the people at my company have a PhD and/or MS, even though this is completely unnecessary for the job. I do not come from a science background, so this does not benefit me either. It is a bizarre situation, as I am given much more responsibility than many people who are older, more educated, and higher in the company than me. Management clearly does not want someone who looks like me to be a leader at the company, but they give me the responsibilities of someone higher up without the title and compensation. I have been given several reasons as to why I was not being promoted as quickly as others. Side note, I have been promoted several times. My issue is that I am doing more than others in terms of workload and responsibility, and am not being compensated for it properly per my current job description. I have just as much more responsibility than many people above me, and am being treated by a different standard. Before my most recent promotion, which took 2 years to get, my previous supervisor, also a WOC but older and with a PhD, told me that I was being treated differently by higher-ups at my company based on my age, gender, and lack of education. Although my work product was perfect, she said that I was being judged on how I appeared at first and interacted with coworkers. Even though I have friendly relationships with all colleagues, she likely meant that I was too outgoing. She said she wanted to perform an experiment with me. She said that maybe I would be promoted if I started putting more effort into my appearance. Side note, I am a confident, charismatic person who respectfully does not need to put any more effort into her appearance. And even if I did, it is not her or anyone's ducking business. She said I should wear tighter clothing, so I maliciously complied out of spite. I went from business casual attire that was the standard at my office to full-on business attire. I also never wore makeup to work and wore a full face of makeup every day for months. While others wore athletic t-shirts, sneakers, and hoodies, I wore dress shirts, dress pants, and pantsuits. My pastel-colored pantsuit really caught people's attention, and people would continually ask, "Are you going somewhere with a client?" I would always reply, "No." I received feedback that I need to put more effort into my appearance. That shut everybody up real quick. My former supervisor apologized after a week and said she shouldn't have said that. I kept up the act out of malice for a few weeks after, and I got the promotion a few months later. The next one is an entitled people's story, so to start off, this isn't my story, but one of my best friends, Alyssa. But I was there when it happened. It's something that happened years ago, but we were reminiscing about the past, and then after seeing a couple other posts similar to this situation, got talking about it. I have been given permission to talk and post about it. My best friend, who we'll call James, met the love of his life, Alyssa, when we were teenagers. Unfortunately, they ended up breaking up over a misunderstanding. A few years later, they ended up meeting again through a mutual friend of ours, Alan, who was her cousin at his birthday party. After reconnecting, they fell back in love and got back together. When they wanted to get married not even a year after dating, his family, mainly parents, thought they were moving too fast, along with the fact they thought she was only after his money, which wasn't true because she had her own money as she was doing very well in her career just as he was. And when his family realized that, they apologized and warmed up to her. Unfortunately, roughly 4 years after they were married, he died in a car accident. The house, which he bought not even a month before they got back together, was in his will to go to her and the daughter they shared together. Roughly 6 months after his funeral, his sister, who we'll call Josie, showed up at the house. Alyssa has allowed, and still does allow, James' family to see their daughter, along with letting them have her for occasional holidays, or almost any time they want, or the daughter wants to go over. When Josie said that she, her husband, and 2 children needed a place, Alyssa was quick to offer them a place to stay until they got back on their feet. The house is a 3-bedroom with a finished walkout basement. Here's where it gets amusing in our eyes. Josie started going off on her, saying how Alyssa needs to move out and find somewhere else to live, that it was only right for Josie and her family to be the one that has her brother's house. She even said that Alyssa only had it because of him, and now that he's gone, there's no reason for her to be still living there. Josie even went as far as saying James would be rolling in his grave knowing there's lesbian lovers living in his house. I wasn't living there, but was there quite a bit to help out. That it was wrong because she, Alyssa, was cheating on James even before he died with me, and Josie didn't know why he even stuck with her, which surprised us both to hear her say, cause she always appeared that she liked us both. After they argued more, Alyssa tried multiple times to get her to leave, but of course, Josie said she wasn't going to until the house was given to her like it should have been all along. Alyssa eventually called Josie's parents and had asked them to come remove their daughter from the house, and if they couldn't, she'd be forced to get the authorities involved. Thankfully they did, but unfortunately over the next month, Josie showed up and tried multiple times arguing with Alyssa more over who should be living in the house until her parents threatened to take her out of the will. The next one is an entitled Parents Story. I, 33F, just married my husband, 33M, this past Saturday. I planned our wedding over the past 13 months. I did hire a day of event coordinator, but I did the majority of the work. I wanted simple elegance, and I found a church and a reception hall that didn't need a lot of decor added. My husband and I also decided to keep our wedding fairly small, around 100 people or so. I should mention my parents gave me a decent lump sum of cash, not overly crazy or small, to spend on my wedding as I see fit, but anything outside that cost I needed to pay for with my husband. The money essentially covered the reception costs besides decor and entertainment and cake. From the beginning, my mother wanted to invite a ton of her friends. I told her that simply wasn't possible due to the size of the venue we booked, but it never stopped her from asking every couple of weeks to see if we could add more people. Friends, she insisted, had prayed so hard for me to find someone to marry. I only conceded for a few couples I have actually known since I was a teenager or younger. One couple I actually speak to on a semi-regular basis. The real trouble started when I informed my mother that the tables the venue provided only seated 8. She wanted all her friends sitting at the same table. She insisted for her, my father, my sister, her brother-in-law, my grandparents, and 3 of their couple friends needed to all sit together, claiming she didn't want anyone feeling snubbed about not being at the right table. I warned her months ago when I took her on a tour of my reception venue that this was not possible. And she started getting frustrated and asking for larger tables or different tables to try and fit a large amount of people at one table. The venue could not do larger tables. At the time, I hadn't even sent out invitations, and I kept telling her that it wasn't the place or time to freak out about sitting arrangements. During this same tour, she started inquiring about all these extra decor items she wanted to add that we didn't really need for our day. The venue has this beautiful bricked patio with trees and lights and a fire pit. It was just extra work I knew that was going to be reliant, and my coordinator, to follow through on since my mother often suffers from headaches, etc., and I knew she was going to be busy with her sister and brother-in-law, any other family members. When I expressed my concerns and mentioned that invitations were not sent and that I didn't want all the extra decor, I received a very stern and angry remark. "This isn't just about you, OP. This is a reflection on me and your father." Over the next several months, my mother insisted on several unnecessary DIY decor for the outdoors. My husband and I purchased a cutting cake cupcake package and planned for one of the cupcake flavors to match our cutting cake, and my mother insisted on wanting to get a slice of cake even though I expressed my dislike of the idea. And both of my parents insisted on all their friends at their table, and I told them I would do my best to sit everyone they wanted to talk to close their table. However, that wasn't good enough, and I had to just make it happen. I didn't make it happen. I sat people close together and I informed them as such. Wedding week arrived and, of course, I ended up having to fix up the extra decor last minute. In addition, day or my wedding, I found out at dinner my parents moved their friends to their table despite sitting literally right next to them at an adjacent table. And today my husband and I discovered a quarter of our cutting cake gone. We only took one slice to share between us at the reception. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.